Most men don't dress badly because they lack style. They dress badly because they're wearing colors that no longer match who they are. At some point after 40, something shifts. Your posture changes, your pace changes, even the way light hits your face changes, but your wardrobe? It often stays frozen in a different chapter. Colors that once felt sharp start to feel harsh. Ones that used to look clean begin to drain your presence instead of reinforcing it. And the problem isn't age, it's alignment. Color is one of the fastest signals in menswear. Before fit, before fabric, before detail. It tells people whether you're intentional or just familiar with your closet. The mistake most men make is assuming classic automatically means correct. Jet black feels powerful until it starts looking rigid. Camel feels refined until it blends into your skin instead of sharpening your silhouette. Bright whites and loud blues don't fail because they're bold, they fail because they're fighting for attention instead of supporting it. After 40, style isn't about contrast, it's about control. In this video, I'll walk you through 5 colors men over 40 should skip, and more importantly, what to wear instead if you want your clothes to add weight, calm, and authority to how you show up. Everything I mentioned today is linked below so you can check them out as we go. Let's get into it. 1. Jet black. Jet black feels powerful. That's why it becomes a default for so many men. Black jeans, black tees, black jackets, sometimes all at once. On paper, it looks sharp, but once you're past 40, jet black can start working against you in ways that are subtle but noticeable. Pure black creates maximum contrast. It pulls attention to edges, to shadows, to lines, and instead of adding authority, it can make an outfit feel rigid, almost like armor. The kind of thing you put on when you're trying to look serious, instead of just being taken seriously. The issue isn't black itself, it's how black is used. Most men keep reaching for jet black because it feels safe, it feels slimming, it feels decisive. But confidence after 40 doesn't come from intensity, it comes from control. And jet black doesn't offer much control, it dominates everything around it. That's why I rarely wear pure black anymore. When I do reach for darker tones, I almost always go softer. Charcoal, washed black, ink navy, graphite, colors that still feel strong, but don't fight the rest of the outfit or your face. A jet black t-shirt tends to sit flat. There's no depth to it. A charcoal tee in a heavier fabric has dimension. It catches light differently. It feels intentional instead of basic. One of my personal favorites is a Davies waffle tee from Paige. It's simple, but the weight and finish make it feel like a real piece, not just a layer you're throwing on. Same thing with outerwear. Jet black coats can feel severe, especially in daylight. They create a hard outline that doesn't soften as you move. I've had far better luck with charcoal or dark gray coats. My rice wool overcoat in charcoal is a perfect example. It carries the same seriousness, but it blends instead of clashes. It works with creams, browns, navies, even softer blacks without ever feeling heavy. That's the real shift here. After 40, you don't need colors that announce themselves. You need colors that support you. Softer blacks still give you depth and authority, but they let texture, fit, and posture do the talking. The goal isn't to cut black out of your wardrobe, it's to edit it. Because the strongest outfits don't shout, they hold the room quietly. And soft blacks do that better than jet black ever could. And that idea, softening without losing strength, becomes even more important when we move into lighter tones. Especially one color that's constantly sold as luxury, but often ends up washing men out completely. 2. Camel. Camel is one of those colors that sounds better than it behaves. And it shows up everywhere you're told to look for good style. Lookbooks, editorial shoots, old Italian tailoring photos, and on paper it checks every box. Classic, refined, expensive, which is exactly why so many men reach for it without ever questioning how it actually works on them. The problem with camel isn't that it's wrong, it's that it's unforgiving. Camel sits in a very specific tonal range. It's warm, it leans yellow, and once you're over 40, that warmth can start fighting your skin instead of complementing it. It pulls out redness, it flattens contrast, and instead of sharpening your silhouette, it often blurs it. I've owned camel coats and knits in the past. On the hanger, they looked perfect, elegant, timeless. But the moment I put them on, something felt off. Not bad enough to notice immediately, I just slightly washed out, slightly softer than I want it to be. And once you notice that effect, you can't unsee it. Camel also has another issue, it blends too easily. When a color gets too close to your natural skin tone, it stops defining shape. Edges disappear, structure fades, and instead of looking refined, the outfit starts to feel vague, like it's there, but not really doing anything. That's why I've almost completely replaced camel with taupe, mushroom, and mid-brown tones. These colors still feel warm and grounded, but they carry a bit of gray or ash underneath. That slight coolness makes all the difference. It creates separation between your clothes and your face. It restores definition, and it adds depth without drama. Taupe, in particular, is one of the most underrated colors in menswear. It has maturity without stiffness. When I want a light knit or jacket that feels elevated, taupe is usually where I land. A taupe knit from Joe Jeans, for example, does everything camel tries to do, but better. It feels luxurious without announcing itself, and it pairs effortlessly with charcoal, navy, cream, and softer blacks. Mid-brown works the same way, just with a bit more weight. A brown suede jacket or wool coat in that range feels grounded, masculine, and intentional, without ever looking flashy. One of the best versions I've worn is an espresso brown suede jacket from Quince. It adds richness and structure, but never steals attention from the rest of the outfit. That's the difference. Camel tries to look luxurious. Taupe and brown simply are. If camel has a place in your wardrobe, it should be used carefully and sparingly. But for most men over 40, replacing it with softer, cooler neutrals is an immediate upgrade. You'll look sharper, healthier, more defined, and the outfit will start working with you instead of blending you into it. And if camel fades you out slowly, the next color does the opposite. It overwhelms you instantly, especially when it shows up right near your face. 3. Bright white. Bright white looks clean. That's why it's everywhere. White t-shirts, white shirts, white sneakers, crisp, sharp, almost clinical. When you're younger, that kind of contrast can work in your favor. It reads fresh, high energy, put together without much effort. But after 40, something shifts. Pure white reflects a lot of light. Too much, actually. And when that light bounces straight back onto your face, it doesn't flatter. It exposes. Every shadow under the eyes becomes more visible. Every bit of uneven tone stands out. And instead of making you look sharper, bright white can make you look tired in a way that's subtle but unmistakable. This is where a lot of men misdiagnose the problem. They assume the issue is fit, or grooming, or that they just need a better version of the same white piece. So they keep adjusting everything around the color without questioning the color itself. But when the base tone is fighting you, no amount of tailoring fixes it. Bright white doesn't soften. It demands attention. And after 40, your clothes shouldn't be competing with your presence. They should be supporting it. Here's the fix. Replace optic white with off-white, ecru, bone, or soft cream. These tones still feel clean, but they behave very differently. They absorb light instead of reflecting it harshly. They add warmth without drifting into yellow, and they create depth where pure white just creates contrast. A bone t-shirt like the ones from Rails is one of the most underrated upgrades a man can make. It instantly looks calmer, more intentional, more refined. The same goes for shirts. An ivory or soft cream poplin feels relaxed, confident, and grown in a way bright white rarely does once you're past a certain point. This has been a major shift in my own wardrobe. I used to default to white tees and white shirts because that's what we're all told is classic. But over time, I noticed something. The outfits that felt the best, the ones that looked the most balanced in photos and in real life, almost always use softer whites. Ecru under a charcoal jacket, cream with mid-brown trousers, bone layered under taupe or navy. Everything looked more cohesive, more controlled. Bright white still has its place. It can work in summer. It can work in sneakers. It can work as a small contrast piece. But it stops working when it becomes the foundation of your look, especially close to your face. After 40, refinement isn't about looking crisp. It's about looking considered. When your colors stop fighting for attention, people start paying attention to you instead. And when a color isn't too loud or too bright, it can fail in the opposite way by disappearing entirely. Which brings us to the neutral that quietly drains more presence than almost any other. If you've been noticing that your wardrobe technically works but doesn't quite feel right anymore, this is usually why. Small adjustments like color do more than people realize. By the way, everything I've mentioned so far, the tees, knits, jackets, and the softer color alternatives, is linked down below in the description. They're just pieces I actually like and reach for, nothing complicated. And if this is your first time here and you're getting value from this, hit subscribe. It helps more men find these videos and it lets me keep making content like this. 4. Flat gray. Gray feels safe. That's why it quietly becomes a problem. At some point, a lot of men start leaning on gray as the ultimate neutral. Gray t-shirts, gray sweaters, gray trousers. It feels harmless, easy, like something you can throw on without thinking. And that's exactly the issue. Flat mid-tone gray doesn't offend, but it doesn't contribute either. It drains contrast, softens structure. And once you're over 40, it has a way of making outfits feel unfinished, even when everything technically fits. This kind of gray usually sneaks in through convenience. Athletic crossover pieces, old basics that never got replaced, good enough items that don't look bad so they never get questioned. But flat gray does something subtle. It flattens you. It sits right in the middle of the tonal spectrum, not dark enough to anchor an outfit, not light enough to lift it, so it just hovers there, pulling everything toward the center. When you wear it near your face, it dulls your features instead of framing them. Here's the fix. Instead of trying to upgrade gray, replace it. If a piece exists only to be neutral, it should actually do something. And for most men over 40, navy and earth-toned neutrals do that job far better than flat gray ever will. Navy is the easiest swap. A navy t-shirt or knit does everything flat gray tries to do, but with structure. It frames the face. It anchors the outfit. Earth-toned neutrals work the same way. Olive, deep brown, or tobacco tones bring weight without noise. They feel grounded instead of vague. A flat gray sweater might disappear, but a deep olive top coat from Express or linen short from J. Crew immediately holds its shape visually. They don't shout, they just exist with confidence. Once I stopped defaulting to gray as a placeholder, outfits got sharper without becoming louder. Navy replaced gray tees, olive and brown replaced gray knits, and suddenly everything felt intentional, even the simplest outfits. That's the real lesson here. Neutral doesn't mean invisible. Neutral should still have gravity. After 40, blending in isn't the goal. Quiet authority is, and flat gray doesn't offer that anymore. Some colors disappear quietly, others hang on from an earlier chapter of your style, and the last one is a color most men still wear out of habit, even though it stopped doing them favors years ago. 5. Bright blue. Bright blue is one of those colors men don't really question. It just stays. Royal blue polos, electric blue sweaters, shirts that feel a little louder than you remember, but not loud enough to trigger a replacement. At some point, that color probably worked. It felt energetic, easy, familiar. After 40, it starts doing something else. Highly saturated blues pull attention fast. They're loud without being intentional. And instead of adding presence, they often feel dated, like a leftover from a phase of dressing that hasn't evolved yet. The color shows up before you do. The issue isn't blue itself. Blue is one of the strongest colors in menswear. The problem is saturation. Bright blue sits too close to sportswear, tech polos, and casual uniforms. It reads functional instead of refined, and when it's worn near the face, it creates a sharp, artificial contrast that doesn't soften with age the way deeper tones do. A lot of men keep wearing bright blue because navy feels boring by comparison, or because they associate darker blues with being too formal. But that's missing the point. Here's the fix. Move away from bright electric blues and lean into navy, ink, and dusty, muted blues. These tones still carry strength, but they do it quietly. They add depth instead of noise, and they work with the rest of a mature wardrobe far more naturally. Navy, when it's done right, is incredibly powerful. One of my go-to pieces is a navy knit polo from Luca Filoni. It has presence without flash. The color frames the face instead of competing with it, and it works just as well with tailored trousers as it does with denim. It's the kind of piece that feels settled, not styled. Dusty blue is another great alternative when you want variation without volume. Slightly faded, slightly muted. A soft blue Oxford in that range adds interest without pulling focus. I've worn both the Nanushka Caleb and J. Crew Bowery Oxford in a washed blue for years because they never feel loud and never feel dated. It just works. Once I phased bright blue out of my wardrobe, outfits immediately felt calmer. Navy started doing the job. Bright blue never could. It anchored the look. It paired effortlessly with charcoal, taupe, cream, and deep gray. And it let texture and fit carry the weight instead of color doing all the talking. Bright blue tries to energize an outfit. Deep blue grounds it. And after 40, grounding matters more than excitement. When your colors stop competing for attention, your presence comes forward naturally. And that's when style stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like alignment. If there's one thing to take away from this, it's that none of these colors are bad on their own. Jet black, camel, bright white, flat gray, bright blue. They all work in the right context at the right time, on the right person. The shift after 40 isn't about cutting things out, it's about choosing more deliberately. At some point, style stops being about experimentation and starts becoming about alignment, about wearing colors that support who you are now, not who you were 10 or 15 years ago. When that alignment is off, something feels slightly wrong, even if you can't put your finger on it. And color is often the reason. The right colors don't announce themselves. They don't fight for attention. They add weight. They add calm. They let fit, posture, and presence do the talking. That's why softer blacks work better than jet black. Why taupe and brown feel more grounded than camel. Why off-white looks more refined than bright white. Why deep, textured grays outperform flat ones. And why navy carries authority without noise. After 40, refinement isn't about looking sharper. It's about looking settled. When your wardrobe starts working with you instead of competing with you, people notice. Not because something stands out, but because nothing feels out of place. You'll find every piece I mentioned in this video linked below. Just things I genuinely like and reach for. Nothing complicated. And if you're ready to keep refining, the next step's simple. Check out the video on screen. It's the best next move if you want to build a wardrobe that feels calm, intentional, and completely yours. Keep refining, and I'll see you in the next one.